Okay, so again, this is the continuation of the solutions to the problems given in the assessment 1 of the expansion and factorization of algebraic expressions. And we are still in the type 1 questions. So for the first two videos, I have already showed you how to answer number 1, A to F. So this time I will be explaining how to simplify or expand expressions from letter G to letter J. Okay, so if you refer to your test paper, the letter G is m plus 2n squared. Okay, so how do we expand a binomial squared? Now first, we could think of m plus 2n squared as m plus 2n times m plus 2n. And then we could simply apply the FOIL method or the distributive law to expand m plus 2n times m plus 2n. But remember, in class, we actually derive an easier way or a faster way on how to expand a binomial squared. Now, just to have a recall or a review, if we have a plus b squared, we said that this is equivalent to the square of a plus twice the product of a and b, so ab, and then b squared, or the square of the second term. Now, we already explained in the class how we arrive at this expanded form. So for now, since we are just giving the solutions to the questions in the test, I will just show you how this expansion will be applied to different expressions such as m plus 2n squared. Okay, so following the formula, we could say the formula for expanding a binomial squared, it says we have to square the a, and the a in this case is m, so we have m squared. So basically you square the first term, and then the middle term is always twice the product of the first term and the second term. So that means 2 times the product of m, the first term, and the second term, 2n. And then plus the square of the second term, which is 2n, so that means 2n squared. Now for me, I am very careful with squaring expressions. So if I have to square 2n, then that means the 2n should be inside the parentheses and then I square it. Okay, so do not commit the mistake of writing it as 2n squared, because 2n squared means you're just squaring the n and not the 2. Okay, so if we say square the second term, you square the second term, it means you're squaring both the 2 and the n. So hence we have the parenthesis 2n squared. Okay, the next step will be you have to simplify what you obtain in the first step. So m squared will remain as m squared, but 2m times 2n is in simplest form 4, because you have 2 times 2 and then mn. Then squaring 2n is meaning you square the 2, that's 4, you square the n, so n squared. So the expanded form of m plus 2n squared is m squared plus 4mn plus 4n squared. Okay, let's move on to the next. So we have letter H. In letter H, we wish to expand c minus 5d squared. So for c minus 5d squared, so applying the expansion for a minus b squared, it is a squared minus 2ab, so it's very similar to the a plus b squared and then plus b squared. So if you take a look at the two formulas, they only differ in the middle term. Since you are squaring a binomial difference or difference of two terms, then the middle term should be a minus sign. Okay, so applying this to c minus 5d squared, so if you look at your first term, that's c, so it means you square the first, so that's c squared, and then minus, so that's minus 2. Your A, your first term is C, and then your B is 5D. Okay, so note, since we already have the minus sign, then the 5D should not be considered as negative 5D. Okay, so 5D is acting as your second term, so that's times positive 5D, and then plus, so you have plus B squared, so that's 5D squared, and you have the parenthesis 5D raised to 2. Then again, the next step is to simplify. C squared and then minus this. Okay, if you multiply the numbers properly, so that's 10, and then you have C and D as the variables. And then the third term is 5 squared, that's 25, and then D squared is just D squared. So the final answer, or the expanded form of C minus 5D raised to 2, or parenthesis raised to 2, that's C squared minus 10CD plus 25D squared. Okay, next. In letter I, you were given 5 minus V times 5 plus V. 5 minus B and 5 plus V is an example of A plus B times A minus B. And again, we learned in class that if you expand an expression wherein the first terms are the same and the second terms are the same, and that the middle sign or the operation in between is one is positive and one is addition and one is subtraction, then that means this will result to A squared minus B squared. So again, we already showed in class how to arrive at A squared minus B squared. So you can explore that on your own. Actually, you just have to apply either the FOIL method or the distributive law, and then you will notice that the middle term, the outer and the inner terms, when you combine them, they will result to 0. So hence you will not get any middle term. So what you get is just the square of A and then the square of B. Okay, so the idea here is that the moment you notice an expression is following the format A plus B times A minus B, then it's always the square of the first, which is A, and then the square of B. And that 5 minus B, if you look at 5 minus V times 5 plus V, if you look at the first terms, 5 and 5, so they're the same. V and V, so they're the same. So that means the answer to this is just square the first, 5, and then minus square the second, which is V. So 5 squared is 25, and then V squared is just V squared. So that's the expanded form of 5 minus V times 5 plus V. Okay, now finally we have letter J. So in letter J, you were given 3R minus C squared and then 3R plus C squared. So if you take a look at it, the first terms are the same and the second terms are also the same. The operations in between, one is subtraction and one is addition. So it's a perfect example for A plus B times A minus B. In this case, you have A minus B and A plus B, which is basically the same. Okay, so applying the rule, or the rule for the expansion for this type of expression, we square the first and then minus the square of the second. Okay, so 3R squared means square the 3, that's 9. R squared means square the R, so R squared. And then C squared squared, by the rules on exponents, C squared squared means C squared times C squared. So all in all, you have C to the fourth, so minus C to the fourth. Okay, so these are the solutions to items 1, J2, G2, J. Okay, so that's it for now.